Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue with part 3 of chapter 4 of the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. This one once again having to do with close encounters of the fourth kind. As a reminder, these specific type of encounters involve actual UFO abductions, meaning the people go into the spaceship itself and then either report back about what happened there or also what happened afterwards. This will chronicle several more of these encounters for this part here, including one that's considered deeply disturbing. I'll see which ones again that I've featured in the past and others that are brand new to me. And as always, I'd love to hear what your own thoughts and comments are as well with regards to each of these encounters, but definitely some other type of weird, disturbing stuff that I'm going to mention here in a minute. But let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. And then I'll feature another part. I think there may be probably one more with regards to this chapter, and then that'll wrap things up. So the first segment is called Base City of Operations. And here's what it says. The following deeply disturbing case contains virtually all of the components currently to be found in the general subject of ufology: abduction, missing time, cattle mutilation, journeys to strange landscapes, and underground bases apparently operated by both aliens and humans. The encounter bears certain similarities to that of Judy Dorothy and was likewise investigated by Dr. Leo Sprinkle, together with Dr. Paul Benowitz, a physicist and member of the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. As with Judy Dorothy, Sprinkle needed to resort to hypnotic regression in order to liberate the memories of the alleged incidents experienced by the witness, 28-year-old Myrna Hansen. The sessions were conducted between May 11th and June 3rd, 1980. The story that emerged is as follows. Myrna Hansen and her 60-year-old son were driving near the town of Cimarron, New Mexico, when she saw 5 UFOs land in a nearby pasture and capture a cow. She and her son were then abducted by strange beings who proceeded to mutilate the unfortunate cow right in front of them. Once again, they seemed to be unconcerned that the animal was experiencing abject agony as a long knife pierced its chest and its genitals were excised. Again, they informed their human captive telepathically that it had to be done, however unpleasant it may be. Myrna and her son were then taken on a bizarre journey to a number of different locations. During the journey, the beings forced her to disrobe and gave her what has become the typical physical examination, including a vaginal probe. Apparently, she later suffered from a life-threatening infection, which she attributes to this intrusive procedure. As with the Hill case discussed earlier, the beings were fascinated by human physical attributes. In Myrna's case, the beings, who were totally devoid of body hair, found her hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes extremely interesting. After the physical examination, a tall, jaundiced-looking man appeared. He informed Myrna apologetically that her abduction had not been intended. The reader will recall that Judy Dorothy's encounter had likewise been a mistake. The following event was even stranger and more unusual. After informing her that her son, who had been taken elsewhere, was unharmed, the tall man said that the other beings, apparently grays, would be punished for their mistake. She remembered seeing them naked from the waist up, described their terrible thinness, and how they had more ribs than we have. Her description of them: one has a nose that's crooked, turned up and crooked, they shuffle and drag their feet, is more reminiscent of medieval goblins than the crew of a starship. Likewise, their mode of dress was a far cry from what one might expect. One being wore a Franciscan monk's collar with a belt and military boots, while another square-headed female being wore a collar gathered at the neck like a pilgrim with ruffles. Myrna was taken to a strange place full of control panels, TV monitor screens, and other electronic equipment. At one point, she remembers seeing a window with a starscape beyond. In the foreground was a planet which apparently was not the Earth. Throughout her encounter, Myrna was aware that the beings did not seem to know what they were doing, and this apparent incompetence frightened her more than anything else. "I'm scared," not of him, but of his confusion. It worries me that they don't know what they're doing. She was then taken outside by another group of beings who were attractively dressed, and three of whom looked entirely human. She immediately recognized the landscape as that of the Roswell region of New Mexico. The beings took her to a hidden elevator which descended to a vast underground complex described by her as the base city of operations. The strange gray type entities were everywhere, but there were also many human beings, implying that the complex was jointly run by aliens and humans. At this point, Myrna briefly saw her son, but he was immediately taken away again, causing her to finally lose control and run, screaming, off into the complex. Presently, she found herself in a dimly lit room full of large tanks. When she looked into one of them, she saw that it was full of liquid and contained something else. Something is horrifying me. Top of a bald head. I think I see an arm with a hand, human. Other things look red and bloody looking. Oh God, I'm so scared at seeing this. Tongues huge. They look real big. They're under liquid, real dark. They found me, but when they found me, I was in the corner of the floor crying. The beings took her to another area where she and her son were subjected to intense flashes of lights, apparently some process by which their memories of the encounter were erased. They were then flown back to the point of their abduction aboard a UFO, which was also carrying their car. Their car was lowered to the ground, and Myrna and her son continued on their journey, now unaware of all that had happened. It is alleged that later Myrna had several CAT scans, which revealed small devices in her brain. During her encounter, the beings had made necessary alterations to her, which including inserting these devices. Many of the abductees report similar procedures involving implants, some of which have been retrieved through subsequent surgery. Although none of these objects has ever been proved to be of extraterrestrial origin, some of them do seem to have some remarkable characteristics. For example, a doctor in Santa Barbara, California named Roger Lear has recently retrieved unusual objects from several patients. The objects are described as magnetic metallic fragments surrounded by a grayish membrane, which apparently prevents them from being rejected by the body. According to Dr. Lear, always there's an inflammatory reaction to a foreign body. That's the golden God-given rule. But the soft tissue analysis from around the objects produced no inflammatory changes whatsoever. And not just from one site, but we're talking about 3 sites in 2 different individuals. Analysis of the membrane revealed that it was composed of 3 common bodily substances: protein coagulum, a protein derived from blood; hemosiderin, an oxygen-carrying substance similar to hemoglobin; and keratin, the tough protective substance that forms the main constituent of skin, hair, and nails. Dr. Lear said that if scientists could discover precisely how this membrane was put together, we could probably stick anything inside the human body and not get a rejection reaction, which would certainly be a contribution to medical science. Although the discovery of such artifacts implies an experience grounded in objective reality, encounters such as that of Myrna Hansen carry undertones suggesting something quite different. Her experience sounds more like a visit to hell, complete with subterranean location, than an encounter with aliens. Their evil, goblin-like appearance and shuffling gait, together with the bodies of unfortunate humans being stirred in huge liquid-filled vats, offer a scene whose horror seems grounded as much in religion or mysticism as in extraterrestrial science. Of course, Myrna's testimony was given under hypnosis, as are those of many, but by no means all abductees, and this almost certainly is a part of the problem. In his introduction to John G. Fuller's account of the Hill abduction, The Interrupted Journey, Dr. Benjamin Simon wrote, "The charisma of hypnosis has tended to foster the belief that hypnosis is the magical and royal road to truth. In one sense, this is so, but it must be understood that hypnosis is a pathway to the truth as it is felt and understood by the patient. The truth is what he believes to be the truth, and this may or may not be consonant with the ultimate non-personal truth. Most frequently, it is." Although it must be said that Dr. Simon was here, stating his position that the Hills believed that they had been abducted, and that this may or may not have corresponded to what actually happened, the possibility must surely be conceded that some memories retrieved through hypnotic regression refer to a core event experienced by the percipient, with certain details being obscured by material already present in the subconscious. And now the next segment is called Anatomy of an Alien Race. The concept of the extraterrestrial alien, which is now one of the most powerful icons of the 20th century, has come to be represented in the eyes of many ufologists as well as the general public by the mysterious beings known as the Greys. Although in the earlier days of ufology, alleged alien beings came in all shapes and sizes, from hairy dwarves to giant dismembered or disembodied brains, the Grey is now the most commonly described visitor to our planetary shores. They are usually described as being short, 3.5 to 4 feet, with spiny limbs and torso. People who have encountered them often maintain that they have no visible elbow or knee joints, and some have the impression that the being's physical makeup is totally undifferentiated. In other words, they appear to have been produced from the same material with a cookie cutter pattern. The term gray is apt in many cases, but not all, since their color is also sometimes described as white, tan, or pale blue. By far the most striking feature of these beings is the head, which is disproportionately large, almost balloon-like, and tapers to a pointed chin. The mouth appears to be vestigial, no more than a narrow slit, while the nose is most often described as a very small item, or if not present at all. The ears are tiny holes with no external structure to speak of. Without exception, those who encounter the Greys speak with awe and terror of their eyes, which are enormous and unusually jet black. It is through the eyes that much communication seems to take place, with the percipients feeling that they have no defense against the being's penetrating stares. Looking into the Grey's eyes has been compared to looking into eternity itself, accompanied by a sense of being forced to surrender every aspect of the percipient's personality, as if the Greys were entering and becoming one with their victims. There has been much speculation on the reasons for the disproportionate size of the being's head. If we accept, for the sake of the argument, that the Greys are genuine, real beings, the products of their own evolutionary processes, then we can begin to discern possible similarities between them and humans. In his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Dragons of Eden, which deals with the evolution of human intelligence, the late Carl Sagan drew attention to the fact that in the past few million years, the size of the human brain has increased spectacularly. This increase was accompanied by a reshaping of the female pelvic girdle, doubtless to accommodate the larger cranium. Sagan also suggests that this is the reason for the pain of human childbirth, which is apparently unique in the natural world. Childbirth is painful because the evolution of the human skull has been spectacularly fast and recent. He goes on to quote the American anatomist C. Judson Herrick's description of the development of the neocortex, the outermost, most recently developed part of the brain. Its explosive growth late in physiology, evolutionary development, is one of the most dramatic cases of evolutionary transformation known to comparative anatomy. According to Sagan, the fontanelle, the open space at the top of the skull in newborn humans, is very likely an imperfect accommodation to this recent brain evolution. If we accept that our continued evolution over the next few million years will bring yet another greater increase in cranial capacity, combined with a decreasing need to trouble ourselves with physical labor, might we not expect our distant descendants to resemble closely the Greys? Skeptics frequently argue that we cannot be visited by humanoid extraterrestrial beings because such things are biologically impossible. The colossal number of genetic mutations leading from the single-celled organisms of 3 billion years ago to the human beings of today could not possibly have been duplicated on any other planet. However, the theory of convergent evolution offers a possible counter-argument. The British science writer Edward Ashpole, in his book The UFO Phenomenon, reminds us that similar looking animals have evolved from different points within the same phylum basic body plan. The most striking examples are seen in the dolphin, which is a mammal, a shark, which is a fish, and an ichthyosaurus, which is a reptile. Although Ashpole goes on to qualify this by saying that these animals are all vertebrates of the same phylum, and that evolutionary convergence from isolated biospheres would be extremely unlikely, some evolutionary biologists do not dismiss the idea completely. It is within the bounds of possibility that a successful oceanic predator would look something like a shark, no matter which planet we happen to be on. Then there is a chance that on a planet similar to Earth, a successful rational creature with the capacity to develop a technological society would look something like us. In other words, it would possess a large cranium with two eyes located nearby for binocular vision at the highest possible elevation above ground level. It would have four limbs only, since any more would use a valuable processing capacity in the brain and would have been selected out during evolution. It would also have developed something similar to hands in its earlier stages in order to manipulate tools. In considering the increase in cranial capacity that, in our case, harbingered the development of reason and ultimately technology, we are obliged to note that while the shape of the pelvic girdle also underwent changes, it is not large enough to prevent the extreme discomfort of childbirth. As Sagan notes, in human females, the pelvis has probably reached its maximum size. To grow any larger would interfere with the ability to walk efficiently. If our cranial capacity continues to grow, this will present some rather obvious problems for our descendants, problems that perhaps the Greys have already experienced. Many researchers have put forward the concept of neoteny, in which adult animals retain certain larval characteristics to account for the similarity in appearance between the hairless, large-eyed Greys and then human fetuses. There are clearly no conceivable ways that the fragile, spindly form of a female Grey could withstand a natural full-term pregnancy. Therefore, according to the theory, they must reproduce through entirely in vitro methods. This would certainly account for the often reported transparent vessels seen by abductees aboard UFOs in which photo Greys were suspended. The beings frequently tell abductees that their sperm and ova are being harvested in order to strengthen the alien stock, which has become genetically weakened over the millennium. The infants seen in the tanks are hybrids of aliens and humans. It has thus been suggested that this is the ultimate reason for the Greys' presence on Earth. However, even if the Greys were the result of convergent evolution, this would still make no sense as an explanation, since human and alien genetic material would be utterly incompatible. Abduction researchers counter this by suggesting that perhaps the Greys had developed sophisticated methods of altering our genetic material to make it compatible with theirs. However, this does beg the question, if they are such consummate genetic engineers, why can't they repair their own stock without recourse to alien species? In the absence of more comprehensive information, questions such as these must remain open, but in the final section of this book, I shall examine some additional theories on the possible true nature of these troublesome and elusive beings. And then that's it. Let's go ahead and let's pause it here. Again, this was part 3 of chapter 4 of dealing with close encounters of the fourth kind from the book UFO Sightings by Alan Baker. Let's talk about that here. So 2 segments, but both of them kind of longer ones than usual. And again, I'm going to save the rest of it for another part here. So let's talk about them both. First one, the base city of operation, that was deeply disturbing. That's one of the worst case ones yet. That lady, Myrna Hansen, imagine something like that happening to you. You're abducted, your kid is abducted, a cow is abducted as well. You just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, as the author was definitely alluding. And then when that occurred, they basically saw that poor cow being dissected alive. And then when they obviously saw that, that must have been just truly horrifying for them because they had no choice but to witness it there. And then that goes into yet another area involving Myrna experiencing what those examinations, those forceful examinations on her. Who knows what happened to the son because he wasn't there in front of her and vice versa. And then it went into this weird area where all of a sudden they're in Roswell, New Mexico. And then there they are going underground. And then all of a sudden there's people there. There's people mingling with the Greys, with the aliens that are there. Not only that, but then she starts seeing large tanks associated with something inside them, something that resembled people, either people that were dead, long dead, and then just basically their bodies being done something with, or they're being grown, like they're being grown from scratch, and that leads into other horrifying aspects too. But yeah, this is all something that Myrna was experiencing on that poor fateful night of her being out there with her son, just driving along, and then seeing those 5 UFOs somewhere nearby. Cimarron, New Mexico, that was the location too. I think I featured that within some of my videos as well. I don't recall this case, so I'm going to definitely start looking at this one to talk about sometime soon and maybe provide more information on it on a future video. But definitely one of the worst case scenarios you can think of when it comes to that. And then her suffering some kind of life-threatening infection, basically going through the rest of her life. It's just horrible. It's just bad all the way through. And then finally, it started introducing something involving implants. The notion that the aliens leave something within the body itself to either keep track of something or, as the chapter stated, to make certain that there's something subduing memories. So that way, whenever the implants are inside, people won't know it, but at the same time, they can't remember that there's something inside or placed inside of them because it's hindering their memories from before. So the fact that that's in there, that's also pretty scary when you think about it, because it basically is there on purpose to prevent you from finding out what truly happened. Just crazy stuff altogether. But if anybody has more info on this case, let me know, please, in the comments below. And then the next segment actually dealt with more of an examination of the Greys. It presented the interesting theory that the way that the tales associated in ufology and alien encounters kind of morphed from being all kinds of different looks of aliens and species to eventually dominating with the Greys. And it alluded heavily to the fact that the Greys are the more of the barbarians of the alien race. Like they're the ones that are doing all these abductions, doing things in a haphazard and dangerous and scary way, and then doing all this without caring, apparently, with those type of encounters too. Whereas it alluded also that other species, the different types of aliens, were much more mindful of what was happening to humans. Now, here in this case, it seems like the Greys are doing this, and they're doing it for an almost selfish reason because they're needing to populate. And so that's why they're taking sperm and they're taking eggs from humans forcefully under, of course, abductions and examinations, and doing all this to make sure that their own race or species continues afterward. Scary stuff when you think about it, because it's almost like a farm factory of sorts when it comes to the Greys and the over 3 billion people associated with the planet right now. And here you have something to the idea that the humans themselves could be in other words, like a prequels to something along the lines of these Greys, how evolution eventually changes the human body, and that maybe the Greys themselves used to be something else and now are in their present form through evolution. Interesting concepts. But let me know what you guys think. Post those comments below. I'd love to hear what your own thoughts and opinions are on this too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.